just went over. I needed to get. Right.
All right, everyone, it's 5:35 and I call this meeting to order. Let's everyone stand for the pledge of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, everyone, thank you. If you haven't refreshed, that would probably be a good time to do that. I think there were some modifications made yet earlier today even. But first item of task is to go ahead and approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
We have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Agenda passes. Red safety minute and cool moment.
All right, for safety moment, I don't know if you're all aware, but National Work Zone Awareness Week started on April 15th. So not just for us, but we do criminal roads. So we've done quite a bit of marketing kind of around it. This is one of those things that we talk about quite often. It always scares me is sometimes as tiny as our roads are and we have crews out there and, cell phones nowadays. So anyways, safety moment is around just if you're in a work zone, drive slow, be alert, don't use your cell phone. Cool moment, we have a couple different things. So one is the roundup. So the organization's listed there, and I think you guys already got the report, but really cool event. We heard really good feedback. We met with everyone, had kind of an event here to hand out the big checks. So always a neat event. And then second, and I'll go into more details, but we won or were able to do our challenge process for BEAD. And I sent you guys all a text and I'll go into a little bit more detail when we get into fiber, but that's a huge win. That was the team. So the team is Crystal, myself, Matt, and Sam did probably the most.
Sam's win.
It's Sam's win. But that's huge. And I'll go into a little bit more detail once we get down to the fiber stuff. But I thought that was really a cool moment.
Good. They told him it was the best challenge they had ever seen, which I thought was pretty.
Sure, it's impressive. Good deal. All right, for your information, anybody have any questions regarding anything and for your information?
There's one like spreadsheet, kind of like weird typo thing in the residential like billing stack number on the key indicators page. I'm assuming that we're not billing 95.5996 budget year to date. It's just like a typo, some kind of spreadsheet problem, I assume.
What line work?
Operating statistics. Residential. Average bill $1,223. I certainly hope not.
Ooh. Interesting, do you see it?
Yep.
Yeah, that's a formula error somewhere. Yeah, not a crisis, but something.
Yeah, you'd heard before now if that was true.
Yeah.
We'll take a look at that.
Yeah, it's there. One of them sheets that don't look at. Yeah. Every month.
And in the safety report, is there an update on the situation in the neighboring co-op
Yeah, no, so they obviously had OSHA down, obviously had IEC, they not reenacted, but recreated and went through their accident investigation. I can give you early indications maybe offline.
But I mean, it's the.
Yeah, so the individual had burns down his arm, his face, like severe burns. Broke his ankle, which I think when the contact occurred, he was working on switchgear. And when the contact occurred, it blew him back, so it shattered his ankle. But all indications right now, and he should be past the point. When you get an electrical burn, you really won't know much until after 72 hours. But he should be past that point now where seems somebody was looking after him, so. Yeah, he is home. He's been home for a couple of days.
Anyone have anything else for your information? We good? Okay. Go to the next item then, the approval of last month's meeting minutes.
Just a brief comment. Yeah,
What's that, Carl?
yeah, solar eclipse. It was really not what everybody thought. As far as people come, yeah.
How was the traffic here in Greensburg?
With nothing. It was pretty well nothing.
I think there was a few cars out by Matt or I don't know, 74 getting off, but I don't.
No, I don't think I had.
The car was backed up pretty fast.
They were backed up. Yeah, more traffic and nothing.
We did not have an outage, so we didn't have to.
I thought it was pretty cool.
It was cool. Well,
It was neat. I wouldn't have gone to see it, so I'm glad it came to see me. Yes. But it was pretty cool.
That's a fair comment.
Full roof. Sun was hiding behind you.
Yeah, we were here.
I thought the temperature change was. My mom,
That was my.
I don't even remember that part really.
All right, so we need a motion. Approval of the minutes.
So
Dale. You second? Jason seconds.
Jason wants the motion, I can stand.
No, I'm good, Dale.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Minutes have been approved then. Last month's meeting. CEO update.
All right, I'm gonna stand up.
Sure.
All right, so just a few updates. Safety improvement plan. So every year we have to submit a improvement plan for our RESAP. So a couple of the projects that we put on there, one was an employee and it's called Employee Involvement Participation. So this is the first time that we are actually, and the reason is because our operation manager left, which he had put dollars in the budget for the safety summit. And so we have a lineman, Brian Amrine, that had asked to go to that. And I'll be quite honest, I've been to the Safety Summit twice now. It's an excellent conference. And you're starting to see a lot more like linemen, lead linemen, and that goes. So Brian is set to go. I think it's next week, actually. So I thought that was pretty cool. The other thing, Matt, on the right-of-way machine, you want to give a quick update on that?
I pretty much got about everything squared away and pretty well have come to an agreement on everything.
We have not been finally invoiced though yet, right?
know that don't think I'm making more headway on it. But we have it, right?
Yes, we have it in-house.
It's the demo unit.
Yep. We ended up buying the demo unit with, we were able to get all the attachments they needed on it, able to extend the warranty and still came in quite a bit under budget. And it was kind of a win-win. It was a decision we left to our guys, as far as a safety standpoint. They like this one a little bit better because the outriggers are farther. It's safer for them. They feel like, although these things are heavy. So anyway, that's part of the safety improvement plan. Next thing on the operational changes and announcements. So I sent you guys an email that kind of described all the pros and cons and the things of what we were doing. So we have announced that to operations. We've posted the line general foreman position. So essentially what that was all about, it's part of the vision work that we've been doing. And so it's really to try to separate the operation manager from the day-to-day stuff. And so a lot of that will go to, and the difference is going to be the new general foreman is going to take like scheduling, work order review, and then he's the point of contact for our crews, whereas Jenny will be the point of contact for operations from a member standpoint and involved in the scheduling and that, which is going to leave our operation manager to do more strategic type projects to get those done. So where we're at right now, basically on it is we have the position posted. I've only posted the general foreman internally. I think that's strategic, the smartest thing to do. And so we have had one applicant, but it's open until Friday. And I am working with the union on wages. We're not there yet, but I think we will get there. So and then the operation manager position, we still have, I kind of put that on hold because I wanted to announce the general foreman position so that if there were folks that put in for the operation manager and they would rather put in for the other one, that we didn't eliminate that person from one or the other. So we do have, I think I've got another interview actually tomorrow and Friday. So the operation manager position is still open. The line foreman we will fill internally, and then we do have the staking position that we're starting phone interviews, I believe, tomorrow too. So it's kind of where we're at in the operation standpoint. Construction work plan, we haven't really talked about the construction work plan much, so I thought I'd give you guys, there are 8 planned projects. These are 8 projects that are getting things more accessible, getting out of right of ways, old lines, things that our guys came up with. So there's 8 altogether. So where we stand this was as of last Friday. 1 was completed, 3 are in construction, 3 are in design, and 1 is ready for construction. So making headway on all 8 of those. Fiber project update, we'll actually go through that in detail when we get to that line item, but that is something that we've been working on. Any questions from the CEO report or any of the projects that are listed on the project list that I didn't cover? And we have started our contractor, and internally we've started doing, it's very low numbers, but pole replacements. And AES is completed, so you won't see the 4-wheeler running around anymore on the New Point sub. They have completed everything. We haven't got the report yet. Pole testing is complete, which is about the earliest we've ever got it done. So any other questions on the projects or my CEO report? Metrics are good. All right, so we're looking at metrics for March. So March is median temperature. Obviously, it was quite a bit warmer, so it's about almost 4% warmer than our 5-year average. If you look at purchased energy was down, obviously, because it was warmer, 3.8% below our average, which also you see demand showing up about 6.7% lower than our 5-year average. As far as residential, commercial, industry, and transmission, you can kind of see there, we started off the year really, really high in residential. We've since then went negative, which is exactly what you'd expect with the chart that I showed you a minute ago with the median temperature. So, yeah, that's that. Commercial still is beating budget. So, And then industrials, there's really one industrial that's driving a lot of that being in the negative. So some of them have been in kind of flipping back and forth, but there's one that's drastically been lower all year. It was the same one that was drastically lower last year. So it's interesting because we talked about that one quite a bit as far as where we're going to load the sales for this year's budget. We obviously didn't lower quite enough on that one, although I think we only
Lowered it a bunch and they're
Still low.
they're off by a ton when you go back.
to the point, Steve, it's in your district. We actually thought about going, they've switched plant managers a lot. I don't even know if I have a contact anymore, but we actually thought about maybe having you come in sometime and we'll go out and talk to them about the risk. And then transmission staying pretty steady. As you can see, they're above budget overall. If you look at year to date, last month, we were about 5.4% over budget, and now we're at 1.4%. So obviously, we took a pretty big hit this last month in KWH.
Mild weather.
Yep, wild weather, but also not too wild of weather when it comes to storms. So it's been very, very quiet and calm. Few hiccups there. Those were specifically just higher winds and lightning. So if you look at last month, we're well below, I think it was 1,361 hours compared to our 5-year average of 3539. This is typically March is usually a little bit stormier. I'm not going to say much more. And the number of outages, we were at 35 compared to 41 on an average. So nothing big there. AR, 90-day past due. I did add this one in here because Jason had a question last month. Crystal kind of looked into this, and her opinion is there's a few more accounts that are falling off because, you know, we had a really high bill on because of how cold it was in January. So that translates up through the 90 days. That's really, other than that, there's nothing that she sees from an alarming standpoint.
So like your 30-day is high now. Are you gonna show that one?
No, I didn't bring that one along. Yeah.
It's, I mean, I don't know that it's a crisis, but it is an anomaly.
Yeah, I did ask her, I said, hey, make sure we find out, is there anything, are we doing anything different? And she assured me that we're still the process is unchanged. So it's essentially, you got to remember too, on this, 1 or 2 accounts could really, the scale on this just really, you could get 1 or 2 pretty decent
It
accounts.
wasn't like a huge.
Yeah.
The dollars is not big, but the scale makes it look enormous.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. But from her investigation, there was nothing significant other than we probably saw.
Some people who are on payment plans.
Yeah, we've got more people on payment plans right now than she can ever remember.
Yeah, your 30 days doubled.
Yep. That's why people are starting to fall through on their, you know, we give them a month, usually to pay and then put them on a payment plan. And if they don't end up holding up their end, then we go through the next step. So some of those are starting, my guess is it's going to get a little worse before it gets better.
She said, talking to people, there were people who between their electric and gas had $2,000 bills in January from all kinds of weather. Gas prices. As cold as it was that 2-week stretch there where it didn't get above freezing. Nothing works real well that cold.
Not good news, but I will say that nothing has changed in the process. We're still following everything that we normally do. Any questions as far as all the metrics? Wasn't really anything. We are still getting killed by the ash trees. We had a couple in the last, a couple of them go across the road where it was, our lines are on the opposite side of the road. It's a dead ash tree that a little bit of wind kicked it over and we're up our 3-phase. That's happened a couple times in the last 2 months. So still a lot of dead ash out there.
I got 1 or 2 that get lined by me.
Yeah. Any other questions on metrics? All right, Matt.
Okay, balance sheet, the big things in general for this month from a balance sheet, the AR decreased We had lower power bills across the board, and in general, the AR was lower as well. Same thing, decrease in AR, decrease in AP. They went down because we don't have as big a power bill. We're in the off month there. Outside of that, there's really nothing major on the balance sheet that stuck out. I mean, the net utility plant went down because our depreciation was higher than our stuff work orders that were closed for the month. So
And that's pretty typical. Just because we don't have
just
our
hit
major
or,
projects.
that's hit or miss. I mean, some months it'll be really high, some months it'll be really low. God, depends on when the bills come and when everything gets closed out. So any questions on the balance sheet? I mean, there's not really anything major on it that I would say sticks out to me. Statement of operations. There is some things on here that I did want to point out. You can see that our margin, we did pull back some since we had at the top, the growth margin. Controllable expenses, that is all right away for the most part. It is well under because they're not fully swinging yet, and we don't have any bills really come in for the month. So that's how we budget it. We put the set amount each month. It's almost always low, and then it catches up. Pretty normal. One thing that I did want to point out on here is down at the net operating income, and you probably saw this in the financial statements. We added an extraordinary item. If you remember last month, we talked about the auditors and the change in the bad debt. We've started taking $30,000 a month, and we put it under change in accounting principle because that's really what it's not. It doesn't really fit great in a regular bucket, and we felt like that was the best place to put it. So because they are going to enforce the rules that they never ever have, so that'll be $30,000 every month, and it'll show up down in the non-operating income expense line. There'll be $30,000 in income that hits there every month for the rest of the year, because we're going to lower that by about 300,000. So that will impact overall margins, not operating margins, but net margins.
How long will you have to do that?
We're going to do it for the remainder of the year. So it'll be 30,000 a month for the next,
360 this year, and then,
that'll be 300 this year, and then it'll be done.
oh,
It won't continue into the.
I got you.
No,
We need
we're gonna-
10 months to clear that out.
Unless they disagree with where what we did is we came up with an amount that we felt like would work 3 different ways. We took all of the big accounts and took 1 month, divided that out, got a number. We took the biggest account and took half that and got a number. And then we took 2 months of the one account that we're most concerned with that's not using the power like they were. And we used that as a number, and then we averaged those together. And that's how we came up with, this is where we want to be at the end of the year for the potential bad debt reserve. So that's what that all relates to, that 30,000 a month. So you'll see that every single month going forward.
You're just accruing that.
We're taking, more or less, we're moving $30,000 of accrued bad debt every month. So it'll be 300,000 by the end of the year.
This is gonna jack with our operating, or not operating, sorry.
For net margin,
Net
that
margin.
300,000 higher budget a year. So. And that's where it's at. So
We're just gonna hit our capital credit.
Absolutely.
yes,
There's really no way around it, though.
that's the
That's not great.
point. And no, it's not. But I felt it would be better to take it this year versus last year. So,
Or to try to drag it on out.
well, they're not going to let us drag it on out. They pretty much.
Well, you could, you're just gonna get a.
Well, they're going to give us an audit adjustment and we changed it in December in there.
Yeah.
So it's better to just go ahead and do it. I mean, where we're going to be is, I feel reasonable. I think we can justify it. So.
And the right of way is because the work's it's not an invoice timing.
No, they just haven't done a ton of work.
They've actually, we've let them, and we do this every year when, at the beginning of the year, they've been doing a lot of storm chasing, believe it or not.
The other thing is too, they didn't finish up last year's stuff till January
Yeah.
effectively. So they're behind. I mean, I'm not going to say they're not, they're behind. So.
But we want to make sure that they do what we budgeted though, because that's going to make that other problem worse if they don't.
Yes, sir.
It'll
Yes.
exacerbate it if we don't.
We will have no problem getting the right away dollar spent. I can assure you that.
Any other questions on the income statement? Those were the biggest things that I felt like stuck out that were one oddball and two bigger dollars. Cash flow, we went up $46,000 for the month. Nothing really super special there. Money came in and out pretty well like normal. I mean, there will be, this next month, there will be some larger capital expenditures because we'll have to pay for the right-of-way machine as well as, they said the one bucket they think will be done here in the next week or so. So that probably won't hit April. Neither one of them will hit April, but they'll probably hit May.
That's the bucket we were supposed to have last year.
A year and a half ago, yeah.
Yeah, a year and a half ago.
So, and then tomorrow I'm meeting with a couple of the linemen to start specking out the next bucket that we'll get in 3 years. So. Any questions on the cash flow? Next is plant. We're pretty much right in line with the budget for the year. There's nothing really that stuck out there to me as oddball. In general, we're moving along with stuff. I know they're completing projects. I know the stuff around Westport, they're making really good progress on it. The guys have done, like you said earlier, they've completed several of the work orders aren't all closed, but they've completed several of the pull the old junk out of the woods and put it next to the road projects. We have several of those this year, which is what I talked about earlier. And then we've done some pole replacements, but not a huge number of those yet.
Yeah, meters have been sort of our, Suzanne, the new member in your area, the apartments. We got the one up and going. We got the other two, well, there's two other buildings. So one of them, we got the house meter on. Hopefully we've had back ordered meters for those things months now. So anyways, so far we've been able to keep everything.
Done with that, except for the green tag and stuff right
Yep.
there. I mean,
Well, then the meter's got to come in.
Go to the
Yep.
So in general, meters and transformers, we didn't have a single one this last month. I feel like that's something of note. First time that's been the case in almost 3 years. We got almost everything in and we should be well stocked now for a while. Other than that, that's probably the only thing that I felt like was the service upgrades has turned back positive because we've made a much progress out there by Westport as well. Outside of that, everything's moving along. It's nothing really else major sticks out to me when I look through everything. So. Any questions on the plant?
I do have, I guess from a budgetary standpoint, so try to get through this quick. So Sam worked on trying to get a grant for what we call, it's vulnerability testing through, and I can't remember the name of the company. Anyway, we didn't end up getting the grant, unfortunately. There was a ton of people that put in for that grant, so we did not get that. Working through the company that to help us write the grant, and they have what Sam would say, a superior product. It was like a $44,000 product. So it's software that helps vulnerability testing, and it's software to help manage the logs. So think about it as you're constantly trying to attack the system, and then it's logging every time it sees a deficiency. And there's thousands of logs. So to be able to manage that, you need really good software. So again, it was $44,000 for the software. We wrote a grant for it. We didn't get the grant. The software that we use today, Sam believes after working with this company is not as good as this other company. So He got them down to, I want to say it's just less than 20 grand. And so what we pay for vulnerability testing today compared to what this would be, it's about a $6,000 increase. So Sam believes that we can make up a lot of that 6,000 by doing some other things in his plan because he believes this is very, very important. So at this point, I really don't know the dollar amount to ask you to approve, but I probably will in the next week or two send out an email and see if you guys are good with it. I've got a big write-up on it. When Sam tells me vulnerability testing should be it's the top of our risk, it's the top thing. When he tells me this is a superior product and it's going to keep us able to keep up with the logs and put the patches in that are needed, I value that, and I think it's probably worth $2,000 or $3,000. That's not in the budget, but I'll bring that to you once we get the dollars all finalized. It'll probably be something like 2,000 to 3,000.
Do you know how long we've been using the current software?
3 years.
3 years?
Yep.
And is there an annual additional cost then for that? Or will there be a cost once we get the new software?
It will be $6,000 more a year
Okay,
to go to the new
so
software.
that's a year then.
A
I
year,
didn't know
every
every one time.
Well, it's as long, so, yeah, I can't foresee us ever stop
Right.
doing vulnerability testing.
No, I get that.
But anyway, that's coming. I'll probably do it through email if you're all right, unless somebody's completely against it. I think it's
200,
2,000.
2,000, okay.
It'll be 2,000 to 3,000. It's $6,000 more a year, but Sam thinks he can make up a lot of that, and he's going to try to make up as much as he can in the budget, so we don't even have to ask you. But if he can't come up with all of it, which my guess is he won't be able to do it all, we'll need, again, it's $2,000 or $3,000 for vulnerability testing. But it's money that's not budgeted, so.
And then so the next item is 2024 power requirement study. I know we need to take action on this, but Brett, I'm going to let you.
Yeah, I'll go through it. So every 2 years, Hoosier, basically, they come in, we go through a lengthy questionnaire. We look at historical numbers. They have some formulas to predict what they think the load's going to do. They run all those formulas. They run all the loads. We sit down with them and say, well, yeah, that one's probably just like the industrial we were talking about earlier, right? We would want to make sure that that formula isn't showing like an increase in load or anything. So that's the process. They do it every 2 years. They sit down with us, like I said, and we spend hours going through this. I can tell you that even reviewing it, there's not a whole lot of, it's a computer simulation of what our load is being predicted at. So they do use all that survey stuff that we do every 2 years where they ask, do you have a gas, or all that input is put into this model. I'm not real sure why they still require board approval, but they do. So that's why I'm bringing it to you. It is actually a pretty good read though, if you get some time. But anyway, I do need approval so that I can sign off on the system power requirements. My whole leadership team has reviewed it. I've reviewed it several times. Again, we meet with them.
And so we're going to need to approve the study.
I just need you to approve or accept the study, yes, which gives me the right to sign off on it.
Yeah, that document appears in that second.
Yep.
So large industrial loads, large projects that are, like that kind of stuff's not in here.
Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. There is no, because the only one that we knew that there was going to be an expansion was the one that's struggling right now. So that's not in there this year. There are no real big new, no.
What about that?
No, absolutely not. It's kind of an interesting process. We get down to the discussions of like, where's the EDC looking like? New Point's been one of those areas that everybody says, the next 10 years is going to be a growth area, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, so how do we plan that from a load, whether you agree with it or not? Those are just the conversations that you have. And so it's a pretty in-depth way that they get to how and by the way, why this is important is this is what we use to budget. This is what we use for our work plan. These are the numbers that we're saying you know, and we adjust a little year over year, but traditionally, it's a guideline for how we budget our loads. And it really is kind of neat I would encourage you all to read through it. Probably page 3 it gives you the forecast, it's our NCP. So when someone says, how big a system are you? Right now, we're about a 63 summer winter, and they're predicting us to grow to around a 71 by 2042. So that's not a ton, but
It's 18 years later too, but
it's a long time.
we need a motion to approve the requirement study.
So moved.
We have a first and a second. Any additional discussion, questions? If not, all in favor say aye. Opposed, the same. All right, so we have several policy reviews. I know. I can walk through. Why don't you?
Okay.
Go through them and we can maybe go ahead and
Yep.
approve them all.
So the first one is policy 10.2. This is hours of work and rates of pay. Honestly, this one's really driven by fair labor standards. The only material change on this one is just to clarify, it's required work. It's just not regular work. Other than that, that's really the only change that we saw. We did have legal review this one just because these requirements change quite a bit.
Brett, I think the date adopted dates are just switched on the second page.
They are, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can fix that. When we move.
Yeah.
Next one is 4.3. This is allocations and refunds of capital credit. This isn't even a material change, but our system links documents so that if the policy says, go fill out this form, the form links to it, right? So all you gotta do is click on it and it goes right to the form. And so that form we changed months and months ago. And so the name changed. So the link went away. So the only change here is the name of the link. So it's non-material for you all. And that's the only thing that we are recommending. Unless, of course, you want to change how we do capital credits.
But just that link is. Speaking of that, have we had any,
That's a good question that I don't know the answer to. But Early? Have you heard of any?
No.
I will find out and let you know.
Okay.
Oh, our infamous 2-1 area coverage and line extension. I really wanted to come in and give you a brand new look at this, but I just have not had time to study it. So, but it was up and it's something that we did need to take a look at. I didn't change anything here except for obviously the name. This is one I honestly think in the next year or two, we really need to dive into. I think it's a source of public relation issues that we're kind of putting on ourselves, and I don't know what we benefit from it. So anyways, more work to come on that.
Okay.
There's really nothing material change. And then 2.7 is member access to board meetings. We didn't put any changes on this either. There was a question at one point on the 7-day notice. And I think the idea is that the agenda doesn't come out until Friday,
Which is only 5 days.
which is only 5 days. But I don't know. You could argue that either way. The reason you'd like to have it before the agenda, my argument would be, is so that you could put it on the agenda. And you know what block of time, and maybe you need another agenda item to talk about it. The other side is that, I mean, the other argument you could make is that folks don't know what's on the agenda if they want to talk about it, because the agenda doesn't come out until Friday. So we didn't change it just because there's negatives to either side of it. So I don't know that we've ever had I can tell you in the 7 years I've been here, there's never been a case where somebody's come to me and we've said, you can't present. I'm assuming if it's something that is relevant and I come to the chairman or the board and say, look, they didn't meet the 7 deadlines. It's critical to be on this agenda, blah, blah, blah. Can't imagine that we wouldn't deviate and do that. But I guess my point is we've never, ever had an issue. So anyway, we didn't put any changes into that.
Fine. All right, so I think with the changes with those 4 different policies, we can attempt to approve them all at the same time.
I'll make a motion to approve all 4 policies.
Okay, go first,
Second.
Carl second. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, the same. So they're all approved with the changes that Brett's gone over.
All right, so risk management. We met on April 11th. It's my leadership team that meets. This was to go over Q1 for 2024. Unfortunately, this is pretty boring. So we closed 2 risk. If you haven't noticed, we have new gas tanks out back. Matt actually arranged to have Premier Ag get us, they're double inflated, so they don't need to have a dike. And so we don't have to, we get hit every year on our safety thing. And it's actually a pretty decent size hit. Because we forget to get the plug in, because you don't want water sitting in there from the rain. And then they notice that the plug's not in there. So I guess you think we'd learn to get the plug in the day or. So anyways, we got it taken care of. We were able to do this without we didn't have to buy the tanks. So they fill them and we're through a contract to do that. Second one is our IT storage. So you all approved that in the budget. It is in place. We plan to have the last bit of it. I think it's later this week. At night, he's going to actually convert it over. So everything's been bought, everything's in place. It's just cutting everything over now. Other than that, we sat and tried to think through any new risks that, and we didn't come up with anything. So the summary is management believes we have mitigations in place to operate at an acceptable risk level. I will say that I would walk through this if you get a chance. By the way, the name of my file says Rick. It's supposed to be risk. But anyways, you may want to read through these just to see what we're doing on some of these risks that we have identified. I think it's just a good read. And if you see something or think of something that we're not currently talking about, bring it up. All right. Good.
Ready for the next?
Yeah, so I thought what we'd do, so this is concerning a letter that we received. I thought if you guys are okay, I'm gonna go through the timeline of like how this started, where we ended up. Then I'd like to go through just a real quick overview of the questions that were asked, the answers, the letter I'm providing or suggesting we provide, and then sort of next steps. The letter will have a link to the video that we taped. So last night we had invited them, folks in that signed that. No one showed up. Jason was here, Steve was here, Carl came. Thanks for coming. I thought that was good. But anyway, we taped it. And I thought I actually went through it today, and I think we have a really good marketing piece where we're answering questions that honestly I mean, they're going to get asked in the future, so we'll have something to point back to. So anyways, on 3/20, we received a letter from 12 members and it was just questions about solar. And honestly, that all of them were really, other than there was a couple that we really didn't understand. In general, they're questions that you could imagine someone asking. So I had called and I didn't know the list of 12, I didn't know who the spokesperson was. So we called the first person on the list and basically pitched them the fact that we really wanted to have a two-way communication. There were some questions that I didn't understand completely. Plus we knew that when you're talking about demand and energy and capacity and all these things, no one's going to understand it without having a ton of other questions. So we thought, let's just go through these. We'll bring in two experts. We've been through the same slides with some of the members on the list. So we thought it would be very, very helpful to bring some folks in. So I reached out to the first person on the list, basically asked, hey, here's 4 or 5 different times. Never heard anything. A week later, I ended up sending a text. That next day, that person dropped off a actual formal form, the complaint letter form, which said they wanted written responses. So what we did at that point was we moved forward with having the meeting. So we picked the time that we thought was best for everyone. We sent an invite out. The invite's attached in your guys' call to order if you want to see it, to all 12 members. So we actually sent it to every member that was listed on there for a meeting to present the data with a 2 industry expert. Again, this allows for two-way communication to get all questions answered in a timely manner. And again, it's really about preventing misunderstandings and getting all the questions answered, especially any new ones. So we actually had a member literally 2 days later call in, confirm he was going to come. Actually, we had 2 members call in and say they were going to come. And then on the 17th, I hadn't heard from everyone else. So I had asked Crystal to have the MSRs call to see if anyone else confirmed. And after that, all of a sudden, we started getting a bunch of letters, basically saying they wanted written responses before they were going to meet. And you guys can see the trail there. I mean, it came through mail, came through drop off. Essentially, all the documents that were dropped off and signed were the exact same documents. One was addressed to the board. That's the one that you guys will need to address. Basically saying that we weren't following the rules and things like that. So then Steve had followed up with somebody there, a new member. We actually added them to it, sent them an invite. Again, all the way through 4/22, we were getting these letters back. So what we decided to do again was to have this meeting. So we had the meeting last night. We had Hoosier representative. He's the manager of member services. And then John Wolfram. John is decades and, he's defended rate cases and develops rates and does cost analysis. He came in last night to actually go through it. So I thought it was actually a really good, even though there wasn't anybody here, it was a really good time to be able to let him go through this stuff. We asked a few questions. Again, it was all recorded. So the letter that I'm going to send, I want to go through the answers just so that we have it recorded that we went through the answers. I'm going to be providing written responses unless you guys tell me otherwise, which are what I'm going to go through. And this actual letter has a QR code. So you could actually just put your phone on it. It will go right to the video. And there's also a link on here that they can go and watch the video. So the letter says, thank you for engaging with your co-op on the topics of residential owned solar and the buyback tariff of SPDG generation. To serve our members with complete transparency, we held a face-to-face meeting with our leadership team and 2 industry experts. Two-way communication allows us to listen, carefully clarify the original questions asked, resolve any additional questions in a timely manner, and prevent misunderstandings and misinformation. Our goal was to get members' questions answered with accurate information. During this meeting, we provided responses to the questions we've been asked. I would highly recommend watching the recording of the meeting, the QR code and recording meeting link are at the bottom of this letter. So I'm going to go through the questions that were asked and sort of how we are answering those. And then again, you guys can see the letter if all the work. So the first question that was asked, and I changed some of these as far as like how I put the question because some of them was very, very, very confusing. It was written in a way that was very confusing. So the first one was how were solar rates determined for the current solar tariff, right? So the solar rates are directly calculated from our wholesale power bill to RMC. So when I say wholesale, that's Hoosier Energy, right? So essentially you take the bills from Hoosier, that's how you calculate, that's how they calculated in 2014 what our solar rate was going to be. So essentially, how do you calculate that? Take the charges for production demand. So remember, production demand is basically recovering costs for all of our power plants is essentially what it's doing. And energy. So all the energy, all the production demand, it was totaled up and it's divided by the total of KWH. So I think the best I can see where the numbers all match up is their timeline was part of 2012 and part of 2013 was the test year that they used to develop, which the rates were developed in, I think, June of 2014. Still the same rates we use today. So the tariff SP, so the tariff, and I go through the name of it, produces a higher payback than the methodology used in PURPA standards in the Indiana Code 8140-17. So what I mean there is the PURPA standards is something we do have to follow. PURPA standards say that if someone puts in residential solar, you do have to buy it back, and it gives you a rate, which is the avoided cost. We are well above that. And then Indiana Code 8140-17 just came in not even a year ago. That is not really relevant to us because we don't fall under the IUR jurisdiction, but we beat it by over 40% in our rates. So then the next question was, are the Decatur County REMC members who have solar represented in the cost of service study in 2014? And I don't know what they mean by this question. This was one of those that I wanted to get them together so I could ask a clarifying question. So I'm just going to answer it the way I think best, which is every meter point on your system is represented in a cost of service study. It's the whole point of the cost of service study. Solar payback rates are set based on avoided cost principles, not a cost of service study. So what I mean by that is you don't have to do a cost of service study to calculate whether it's Indiana Code 8140-17 PURPA standard or the way that we did it in 2014. You'll need a cost of service study. It's math right from your wholesale bill. The next question, do solar members own the infrastructure to transmit electrons through the grid through the 37 monthly fee? And so I know where this question came from. If you read our website, we talk about the fact that there's this perception out there that we charge, I'm just going to say 10 cents for energy. We buy it from a solar member at 5.5 and then we sell it for 10 cents. And so my comment to that is what's in the 10 cents is way more than it's recouping costs for a lot more things than electrons in general. And so the way I described that the best was you don't own any transmission. You don't own any distribution. You don't own any of the things to move those electrons around. All you own is electrons being popped out at a certain point. So I think their comment back to our website was, well, yeah, we do. We pay this rental fee, $37 fee every single month. That gives us access to the grid. And it doesn't. That's not what the $37 fee is. There's a lot of discussion around in the video, and I would suggest you watch it, of the guy that actually did our cost of service study and built the $37 fee of what actually that cost recovers. It is not a access to the grid. Generally speaking, it's covering costs that are fixed that don't vary by KWH. DCREMC buys energy from solar members at a rate much less than what they charge all members. Our answer is Decatur County rates are built to recover the entire cost to run the business. Energy or electrons are just a small fraction of that. The recorded meeting goes into great detail. Again, if you go in there, we actually talked about these last two questions quite a bit in that meeting. Is DCRMC a nonprofit organization? Of course, we're a 501c12 nonprofit organization. Next question, aren't all rates supposed to be fair and equitable for all members? So our response is fair and equitable rates it's a basic foundational requirement. It's not you should have equitable and fair rates. It's foundational to everything we do. You have to do that. This is why we hire an independent third party to complete our cost study and develop rates. So yes, we agree they should be fair and equitable. Does Hoosier Energy or use the renewable energy credits in any way that are generated by our personally owned equipment? The answer is absolutely not. The recorded meeting goes into a lot of detail. This was something that they looked at doing an aggregate, but you have to sell it back in the market. There really wasn't a value when Hoosier looked at doing that at that point in time to do that. And so, no, they don't sell any energy credits off of something they don't own. Was Hoosier Energy involved with determining the 2014 DCR-EMC solar rates? This again is one of those questions that I don't really know what they mean. All I can say is Hoosier Energy has no authority to set retail rates. But again, I don't know what that question really is about. And then the last question that they asked was Indiana Code 8140-17 covers how a provider paybacks consumer for solar. Why doesn't DCR-EMC follow the law? Because if we follow the law, according to code 8140-17, it's essentially the cost of the MISO hub, which is a simply avoided cost. We pay 40% higher than that today. So you'd be dropping from around 5.5 cents down to 3.9-ish, 4-ish, if we did that. So we actually pay more. We don't necessarily have to follow that code because it's not a URC requirement, but we pay well over that. So then I basically say, thank you again for your engagement. We trust that your questions will be answered. Again, we highly encourage you to watch the video to prevent misunderstandings and misinformation. As always, we're willing to sit and discuss and meet. So I'm going to sign this letter and send these out tomorrow. Anyone that has their name on any of the documents that you guys see here will get this copy sent to them. We are not putting it on social media. We're not putting it on a website. I'm not doing a blast at this point. I think later on that this might be a good piece for a marketing standpoint from an understanding. But I think it's more important that we keep the line of communication open. If they have questions, let's answer them. So anyway, I feel like if you look at Rule 16, we followed that to the T. Actually, we're in front of it and probably providing well above and beyond what that actually says. So the plan is to sign this, send this out to all the members that we're signing. But I will say that it's very inconsistent in what they all filled out, but there is at least one that did require or that requested this go to the board. So the way that would normally work is you work through the process, but I'm already telling you that we've worked through the process. We've done the investigation. We've tried to answer the questions in written format and in video format. And so now I think you guys as a board will also need to respond. It doesn't have to be anything lengthy, but I would respond in the same manner that we are as far as we're sending a letter with the answers. It's got the video on it. But they did ask this to be reviewed at the board level. So I do think you owe some type of responses as far as that goes. So
Was that person part of who's going to receive a letter?
yes,
Yeah, so they're going to get that from you,
I would.
but they've also asked for board review.
Yeah, I'm trying to think which one it is so I can actually show you where they would ask that. Yeah, so if you go to one, there's the timeline. It's the third file down. That's actually the Appendix A form. If you go down to the bottom of that first page, see where it says requesting CEO response, yes. Requesting CEO conference, no. Requesting board review, yes.
Okay.
So I think the way this was interpreted, in my opinion, was this was the person that was answering for all 12 that wrote the original because it was attached to this.
And because they're requesting board review.
I think you owe a response. And when I say a response, it doesn't necessarily have to be, you can put whatever you want in there, but you should read through their concerns and talk about it and need to respond in some manner. Suzanne.
Okay, just a couple things, because I'm sure Mr. Wolfram and the Hoosier rep didn't come here out of their own free will. Our REMC had to pay for that, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, so number one. Number two, I did watch the YouTube video that was attached with that. I know you're not going to social media or blast that, but don't you think that'd be something, since we already paid for them and it was useful information to put on our REMC website, which is questions on solar, just a general, because it's not really specific to these. It's just general, it's general information that we paid the experts to come in. So I feel like not necessarily a social media blast, but just for your information, if someone goes to our brand new website, which is really nice and easy to use even by phone, that instead of doing the QR code, they could just get a direct link, since I'm just thinking
Yeah.
benefits of what we've already paid to have done.
Here was my thought process on that. To answer your question, yes, eventually. There's going to be a ton more questions that are going to come out of this. There's no way there couldn't be. If someone understands exactly what was all said in that video and understands all these questions that were wrote, they need to be working here. So there's going to be more
I
questions.
just think it was more of a general conversation, not directly just to these, is what I felt like.
Yeah.
So I felt like while we're spending the money on having the experts come in, we should maybe utilize that for all members. Number one. Number two, is it something as simple as the board says we support what our cost of service independent study, Mr. Wolfram and Hoosier?
Yeah, I think
I mean, they're the experts. Like you said, I know how it works and the basics of it, but they're the details of it. So
What
basically,
they're wanting you guys to answer to is, and I think, yes, that could definitely be part of it, but I think they also want an answer to why Rule 16 isn't being followed, which I can tell you from a legal standpoint, it was. But if you read their letter, I think, isn't that what they were kind of?
where's that at?
So it's the one that's, they all, so,
The very first one, it's right below the timeline.
no, not that one.
It's the next letter.
The one after that?
No. I'm gonna count down.
it's the Indiana Code 8-10-40-17 covers provider payback on solar.
No, so go down one, so including the timeline, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's the one that's actually addressed to the board.
6,
Okay.
7, 8, 9.
Yeah, and then after that, it's the same letter.
Oh, from other, okay.
I think this is what you actually got to respond to.
And is there something that says, sorry, Jason,
Oh, you're fine.
you know, the individuals, is something that they were presented at one time versus what they're getting now in rates has changed? Or when they, before the installation of solar panels, their investigation with the REMC, something our REMC gave them versus what they're paying now is different? Is that any correlation to these indications, or do we have any documentation that letters were given before they installed those of what their payment would be, and or if there's any?
Same for 10 years.
Yeah, the rate's been the same.
So I didn't know if any of these members were given like false information or general estimation from the REMC.
We would never, ever estimate what, because we don't have the expertise and understand every single one of these units, depending on if it's facing this way, they all produce differently. We don't have the expertise in-house to do that.
And everything on that says the rates are subject to change by the board at any time too. I mean, you guys can change it.
And that rate is at on what?
I mean, you've just changed theirs from, I don't remember what it is, but they're at 4 cents.
I think the real question for me, and if the board is gonna have a discussion about this, is why are we including the production demand in the calculation? Our rates are higher than literally everyone else in this. Why are we paying a premium for this power? Why are we buying power from them at a premium over what we can just buy from Hoosier? I don't understand why the production demand is included.
Are we the highest? I did not.
Second.
Second highest.
And it was,
But it's by a huge margin. It's by what, 30%? We're 30% over the average?
oh, over the average, yeah.
You know, the average and what we are, is that something we can?
Yeah, I can actually.
It's on the video. Well, I mean, it was in the presentation last night.
Is
So
it
I-
indicated that we were the second one?
Oh, yeah.
So I've looked up every
Right there.
rate across Indiana that was on everybody's website that I could find. And we are on the average significantly higher than most. There are some that pay higher than us, but their monthly fee, like ours is 37, well, their monthly fee would be 74, and that was the minimum. You're gonna pay 74 no matter what you produce.
And it's all because of that production demand inclusion in the calculation. So I asked John that, And that's not the norm to include that. So I guess I'd like to know from the board why Decatur County RMC is incentivizing and subsidizing this rooftop solar.
You could even see on the right side what they've gone to now.
I knew we were higher than.
Because it, according to the math, it should be 3.9 cents. We're paying 5.5.
Right.
On average, we have seasonal.
And actually, so the other slide so this right here is an interesting slide, and ignore the left green one because that's Brett's thought on another solution you could do. If you look at our current rates there, that's the total savings annual, that 772, which is our average payback there. The one that's labeled IURC, that is that state law, blah, 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 that just came out less than a year ago, that the IURC makes the IOUs do. Again, we don't have to follow that, but you can see how much less that is. The avoided energy costs over to the right, that's the PURPA. That is the one that we do have to follow.
That'd be the minimum.
That's the minimum.
Okay.
PURPA standards requires that.
I think it's okay if the board says collectively, yeah, we have no problem paying a premium for this and we want to support it. And we want non-solar members to subsidize solar members. If that's the board's appetite, then I think that's appropriate. But I think the board needs to be aware that's what's happening. And as Carl said in the meeting last night, there are going to be more and more of these. And so those numbers are going to continue to get bigger.
And
The subsidies will.
I thought a good way that he put that last night too is there are, when our Hoosier bill doesn't go down when a solar is added, those components shouldn't be part of the calculation. In other words, our production demand, we're going to get charged regardless of how many solars you have.
The recommendation from the rate consultant last night was get this thing to as close to avoided cost as you possibly can while you can before you get a lot of members. I mean, because the numbers, before it gets out of hand, you could get yourself in a bind over it. That was his advice.
So the wholesale energy plus MISO production, stuff like that, that's what we're getting, we're paying Hoosier per kilowatt. The 0.043017, what's that?
No, so what that is if you take all energy and then so today, production demand from our bill, we give them 100% credit for. MISO says that they don't even value capacity that way. So MISO has a formula, they say 50% for 3 seasons, 5% for the winter. So all I did on that one was I said, okay, all of energy you get credit for. In other words, you take all the energy from the bill, and then you take those formulas that I gave you from MISO on the production demand, you add them together, you divide it by how many kWh, and that's what it gets you. That to me was kind of like a middle of the road, like if you were to do something, although I don't know, that one there makes a little bit more sense to me because you're giving them some type of credit for production demand, which today we give them full.
John's advice was to follow the one on the right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What they asked for was
They asked-
IURC one.
The one on the right.
That's what their letter says,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what they want.
3.9.
So the Decatur County RMC is not paying 0.043017. I'm so confused on it. From when you buy from Hoosier, what is the cost per that kilowatt?
About the one on the far right, the
3.7.
3.7.
3.7.
3.7 is what we pay Hoosier. We're currently paying them 5.4. So,
So you have to really add that plus that to get what you're really paying for it?
No.
no, the difference, so we pay Hoosier 3.7 on all the energy we buy. What we're paying the solar members is 5.4 on average.
Right.
And it varies based off the season. Some it's higher, some it's lower. So that's the average.
That's the answer. Penny and a half.
Yeah, roughly.
Well, who takes care of this? wholesale energy and MISO production demand. I mean, where's that fall into it?
That's an idea that Brett has to, that gives some credit for production demand.
Kind of justify.
Hoosier doesn't give us any credit for it, so.
So in other words, if you look at our wholesale bill, actually, here's a better way of looking at it. And I'm glad you guys are asking questions because I think this is important. So if you look at our Hoosier bill every single month, I'm going to go through the components. So energy, there is a section that says every one of your substations bought this much energy. That's on there. We completely agree. 100% of that energy is solar. That won't be on, if they produce a KWH, I won't be charged from Hoosier. So that's green. Definitely there's value there. Member services. That is on our bill. Every month we get a bill for member services, which is like all the services that they provide us. Solar member doesn't give us any services like HR and I mean, some of these other services. It's overhead. They don't provide that.
Yeah, it's the overhead for Hoosier.
It's the overhead.
Yeah.
So then you've got production demand. Production demand, basically, you can see it there. It's cost associated with capacity, whether that capacity be owned, operated, or depreciated. So it could be a PPA. It's essentially all my assets to meet peak. To meet peak, all my assets, that's how they collect that production charge.
And the reserve.
And reserve. And you can argue that when solar's starting to come down at night, the peak is starting to happen. Now they're not producing at peak at all. And it's not even dispatchable, right? But you could argue that they are providing a little bit of production demand. And that's why I came up with that one route. Transmission, they don't own any transmission. So that's not relevant. And then substation, they don't own substation. So those are
Directly they do because they are members, they own the RMC.
not, they own 1/1000th of a fraction of it.
But if you put all the members together, do they not become one?
They don't know. We don't own any there's no transmission assets on our balance sheet. We don't own any of that. We don't own the substation.
Those are all Hoosier, right? I was thinking transmission, that's the regular line, direct line, not the transmission lines, which is the MISO.
Right.
Right. Okay, I'm mistaken.
No, it's a good question though, Carl. So again, they don't own any of those. So those are the items that we get billed for. And the way that John said it last night, I think it was really appropriate. It doesn't matter how many solar members you put on, you're getting a bill for transmission demand. Doesn't matter. You're still getting that substation. Doesn't matter how many. So his whole point is that if you're giving them credit for things that they don't offer, someone else is paying for it.
Well, as he said, they still use it at night. I mean, solar doesn't produce any energy at night, so they're still using that stuff half the day.
Yeah, but if it really comes down to the easiest way to understand this is there are billing components that we get billed for by Hoosier that aren't going to go down if you have 5,000 solar units on our site.
But the point is though, is that they're still using those things, even if the solar is paying them back to where, I mean, they still have to have
That's where the
that.
37 comes
Yeah.
at. Now, there are other co-ops up north that I'm starting to see. What they're doing is they're calling it a grid access charge. So it's like $60.
What's that, double their regular service charge?
Yeah.
That's how. they-
Doing that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's the minimum. There's a couple of them I looked, you pay $60 a month. If you have a solar array, you pay $60 a month and that's your minimum bill, no matter what, no matter how much power you produce. They'll buy the power from you at X and a few of those are higher than ours up north. But if you want to compare apples to apples, if you're paying $60 a month minimum, well, you're still paying significantly more, even if you're getting 6 cents. I mean, if you got a minimum of 60, and that's like you said, it's a board, what's the board's appetite for stuff? I mean, if people in our community want to support solar left and right, and we want to pay 5 extra cents a kilowatt and get as many of them out.
I think
there, what?
that's what we're doing.
That's perfectly fine.
We've had this conversation quite a few times. I mean, And I think there's 99 we have right now. Anyway, I do think you guys need to respond to that, and I don't,
Well, to your point, Suzanne, you had made a comment about maybe what a general response would be. Look over that one more time.
I was just going with the response of Wolfram and Hoosier, just because they're the experts that we rely on. I mean, that's kind of my response. I don't really have my own individual response. I don't feel knowledge enough to
No, and I understand.
make my own. Coming directly from Suzanne, I'm, you know, no, not Suzanne said, I'm thinking Suzanne said the expert said. And they're a third party not related to Decatur County RMC.
Through these communications, albeit them as fragmented as they have been, as evidenced here, do these people understand that in fact we are paying them a premium? Have they, I mean, has there been any communication where they have had an epiphany and they go, oh, wow?
Couple of them.
I mean, I mean,
there's,
I know that's what we're trying to say, but have they got to that? I think, and I'm sorry I couldn't be here last night, but I think this discussion is good. I think this, my concern about the letter is that you start quoting Indiana codes and perp and so on and so forth. To the layperson, it becomes a little bit intimidating. But then I get to the bottom where their question references the code that we're talking about above. And I'm going, well, maybe they're much more versed in it than what I am, to Suzanne's point. My biggest concern is the point I think I heard Jason say is, you know, if we've got 99 now, you know, we can swallow not too much of a problem. If it goes up to 500, it's going to be different. And if it goes to 1,000, it's going to be even more different. And it's going to be a lot more difficult to address at 250 or 500 or 1,000.
But during that timeframe, we have another cost of service study done, because how often are those done?
cost of service study you don't need for a solar.
I'm sorry, what's Wolfram's?
Well, no, he has cost of service, but you don't need, I mean, based upon.
It's all the math.
No, it will,
Did we get the results of how much
Based
solar
off
was costing other members at the cost of service study?
Cost of service study does not have anything to do with our solar rates whatsoever.
Well,
they will change.
No, it doesn't.
I thought that's how we,
You can do, I could do rates right now.
you can do a solar rate based off the IURC rules. If you want to follow them directly, you pull it straight off the Hoosier bill.
I thought he
You got
directed,
a hub in it.
if you charge this to this is what the other members will
He may
basically.
have done a study like that, but we
Yeah.
don't need him to do solar rates.
It will change with Hoosier's new cost of service study.
Absolutely.
Because that will change our power bill. That's what changes this.
Okay.
Base rates have not changed
Their power.
in this time span. That's why these solar rates have not changed. Hoosier is doing cost of service study right now, and that's why we talked about doing ours the following year. Rates will change because this tracker's getting too high. These variable production costs are getting too high. They're gonna be rolled into base rates probably. So rates are going to change. That will change this.
But here's another example. So this newest IURC law that they even mentioned here, they do that yearly and they're not doing cost of service study. They'll actually do the calculations from their power bills. And it's actually, if you read a couple of the IOUs, their tariffs actually talk about that, like how they calculate it.
Yeah, if you go out on the IURC, you can read how they come up with a lot of that stuff. I've got pages of PDFs of everything.
They're all going to be a little different because they all take power from a different node in the MISO footprint. And they do
A different
vary.
hub. A different hub.
Or if you're through a PJM. So you are going to see differences between like a Duke and another IOU.
Well, the rates of Wabash are different than Hoosier. I mean, that's just, rates of Duke are different than Hoosier. Everybody's just a little different. If you wanted to implement something like some of the ones in northern Indiana have done, is to try to figure out how much the service charge should be. Should it be higher, that would be where the cost of service part could come in. If you wanted to say the connection fee to hook on to the grid. Because if you can, that would be a cost of service portion, I guess is what I was trying to calculate that. But so far as calculating the energy, the avoided cost energy rate, they put that out. Hoosier gives us that. I mean, it's based off MISO and I mean, it's just numbers. You plug it all in and it spits out the number. It's X and it changes every year. So to Brett's point, no, you don't need a cost of service study to solar pay every.
But for the original question in the board's letter, this note that was written to the board directly
Yes.
is insinuating that the written complaint will be reviewed by CEO and a response thereto provided to the consumer. They're saying that there was no response provided then,
That's what their letter says.
and that's what the video and the subsequent letters.
I've already sent them a response and I went over that with you guys last month.
That response was that we're going to have this.
So the response has already been taken care of.
Response number one, per the policy, was me sending a letter to each of them, inviting him to the meeting. Because it doesn't, number one, it doesn't say, nothing in that policy says Brett must provide a written statement for every one of these questions. That's not what it says. I responded. I tried to pick up the phone. I couldn't get dates. So I responded with an invite to come in. That was my first response. Now, to close it out, I'm going to send another response with the actual, with the actual written. But I'm pointing back to the video because honestly, we all know how, if we're talking about demand, capacity, even sitting in this room, you're gonna have way more follow-up questions. And that was the whole point of the meeting is let's educate, let's teach, if you don't know what it means, ask. And so that we could have had a two-way conversation. That was the point of it. If you really want your answers, come to this meeting and we can get them from an expert. But I think this should be normal. I mean, like Dale said at the beginning, this is how we should handle. I think we went above and beyond. I think we listened to how could you say we didn't listen? We provided, you may not like the answers, but we provided responses. I think this is a beautiful way of responding to the members and to try to listen and get concerns answered. I think this should be a norm moving forward.
If you got questions and people put on a presentation and you choose not to come, did you really want your questions answered? That's my opinion. That's
On their first request here, what they had with Dan shooting, Dan Shutter, sorry, was that rule one, requesting CEO response, they circled yes. Rule two, step two, I should say, they circled no. So that is why there was no one at this meeting. It's not.
That's their decision.
That's true. You had a meeting, they said they didn't want a CEO conference. And to them, that's the CEO conference.
And we could argue.
I think that, so that's why they wouldn't have that meeting.
But I think in my opinion, if somebody wants answers and truly needs to hear and understand those answers, I could have provided written responses, guys, and you know how that would have went. There's going to be a million questions that'll get interpreted wrong.
I understand.
Not due to malice, just.
I understand it's your opinion that they would be better off with a conference, but apparently it's not their wish. That's why it wasn't.
But the process doesn't require us to do that. We don't have to provide written answers. There's nowhere legally we have to do that.
And under these rules and steps, it says to do wiring board review, and we're reviewing it right now.
Let's just go over them.
I think ultimately we're back to we're splitting hairs. They didn't get exactly the written communication they want. Here's my analogy. I know this much about farming. Carl, if I come to you, Steve or Jason or Matt, anybody knows much more about farming, and I ask questions with the truest intent of learning about farming, it is impractical for me to tell the four of you who I'm asking how I want you to answer the question to get the information that's trying to help me understand farming. And I think that's kind of what they're doing. We're asking questions, and while you're giving us all of the information and all of the data we need to understand it, you haven't given it to me in how I think you should give it to me. But I'm not the knowledgeable person about farming. They're not the knowledgeable person about solar. The people we had here last night were, and they chose not to.
And we discussed this at last board meeting. And we.
Yes, we did.
Discuss this.
Because that was the letter that went was our written response.
Yeah.
That's a great analogy, Dale. And, you know, I look at this and just makes me wonder what they're really wanting.
And I don't know.
I think Brett did a great job in promoting this meeting and saying we can get all these questions answered at one venue.
Well, and in the spirit of transparency, which has been beaten into our heads for the last 6 years anyway. Let's bring the people together that can ask that have the questions and that can answer the questions, and let's walk out of the room and everybody have heard the same thing and you have your answers. But I get the sense that they're hung up on the fact that they didn't get a written response in the format
That they wanted.
that they wanted. And it's more a technicality than it is the substance of their issue.
They were requesting to begin with.
Right, they've got the information. It's just not in the format that they thought they think they wanted it in. But the format they think they wanted it in may not, and apparently is not, the most conducive environment to them understanding the question they're asking.
So here's the rules and regs. I know it's kind of hard to see, but Carl, I don't know which one of these we follow.
I don't know either. I'm just saying,
That's what they're saying, yeah. But it does say the board of directors shall provide a review at the next regular meeting. The review shall consist of not less than a prompt and thorough investigation of dispute and shall result in a written decision to be mailed to the members within 32 days of the regular meeting. So that's why I'm saying I think you gotta respond. But I don't know that I don't know what the dispute here is. Like, this isn't a normal.
So you posted a venue for them to participate in and actively get their questions answered. They chose not to. So then you have prepared written responses now to the questions as you have discerned what they were trying to ask. And that's going to be mailed to these folks. So there's the written response.
So what else? I mean, but because this was written to us, the board of directors.
Now, I think that you just outlined exactly what I just said.
Okay.
You had an opportunity. We had experts here. And
I wouldn't.
not to, but here's the response. Britt's sending you the written response.
But I don't think you want to send the message I think the message just needs to be sent that you guys have been involved in this. You support the decisions that were made. I don't know how you want to put it, but
Well, I think that's kind of what he's saying.
Yeah, I'm not saying we didn't support it. I completely support it. I don't know that it needs to be a big,
I don't think it does. I think it needs to be, since it's to the board, we probably need to say something, but
Sure.
it can be very, very simple and concise.
be very concise.
That's what we need to kind of work through as well.
I agree, but in my mind, we cannot consider this issue closed until they consider it closed. That's my perspective as overboard as.
yeah, you do. Per this, Paul, I'm not saying your letter shouldn't say, of course, if you have future questions, we'll answer them. But I do think you have to, here, you need to basically say,
Done.
you think it's done or not as the board.
I think we can, and I don't know how to wordsmith it, but I think we can say this request, this complaint, this issue is done, but leave it very open-ended. Should they have another one that's
Absolutely.
number 1A or 2A, we'll be happy to reconsider it.
There are these questions.
That's a good way of doing it.
What was that?
These specific questions.
We consider these questions that you've submitted answered. And I would just really leave it at that.
Does anybody know these? I don't know any of these people. Have we had conversations?
I've met with 3 of them to go over these slides. So. But they're not, I mean, I don't think any of these questions are, in my opinion, out of line. I think these are just,
I think it's just information needs to be provided,
yeah.
because I didn't know, I mean, I didn't know the answers to
I don't
them.
understand why you wouldn't attempt, why you wouldn't. That's-
I think, and you touched on it, the legality or being step by step by step by step. I do know those members out there that I didn't go through the right steps to get the answers I should have been expected. And that's probably why they are so much reluctant to do something or just come to a meeting like this, because in my eyes, you should have requested the board to look at this and then had the meeting that the board requested you to get a.
I did that last month.
He did it last month.
Last month,
It was, we agreed to.
Yeah, okay, and when you sent that out to him, was that on there? I didn't read out that said the board requested me to have this meeting last night.
I didn't tell them that the board requested it.
Well, that might be part of the situation.
That's not part of the rules.
I know, I understand.
That might be the way they want it.
Well, that's maybe, and when you read a policy or rule, it can be interpreted just like any law any other way, so.
If we wouldn't have had written communication several times, offered them to come in at whatever times they wanted, didn't get communication back within over a week. I mean, I felt like we have, go find a company that goes through what we just did. I think this is a model for how to answer questions. It's
Because you
Standard.
initially asked for a list of dates, didn't you?
absolutely 4 different days.
And when you didn't get any response, then you just picked a date.
I text back to say, do you have anything? They ended up coming back with a letter that said we want written responses first. We picked it. That's when I met with you guys at the last board meeting. We picked a date.
And the board's not gonna be able to answer those questions anyway.
Yeah.
So what purpose
My
is that?
Dan's point, yeah. We got to defer to the experts. I mean, it's.
But the only reason I made you guys aware wasn't because of policy. I made you aware because it's about tariff. You guys set tariffs. There's nothing that says I need to let the board know on that. You guys don't get half of the complaints that come through, nor do you probably want them. Again, I think this is, in my opinion, a model for listening to members. And maybe they didn't get what they wanted when they wanted.
They didn't get their way. So let's try to finalize what's going to be sent out from, on behalf of the board. We consider these questions brought to the attention of Brett, because they were brought to your attention initially, correct? Answered. We consider this, yeah, just period.
I keep it simple.
I would too.
Based on the information provided by Mr. Wolfram and the Here's Your Energy, we feel that your answers have been.
Slower if you want me to.
Do we go slower?
Just throw it out.
Based on the answers provided by Mr. John Wolfram and Who's Your Energy,
Well, they didn't really answer the questions though.
based on the information provided.
Based on information.
And the answers provided to you by Brett,
by Brett,
we consider these questions to be
answered, not closed, just answered.
I like that, because then you don't want to tell them.
Questions answered and issues addressed.
Is this a second communication from the?
I mean, email it to you.
I think this is a completely different letter.
Okay, it's not part of your letter. Your letter's going, this is.
And then from the board.
Okay.
That's what I mean. I,
This is not from Suzanne.
no, I said from the board.
Who's that? Is that letter only going to the two members that?
There's multiple letters like
It's
this.
gonna go to like 20 different people.
And how many of them?
I would suggest you send it to every single person I'm sending this letter to. Any name that's on there, it goes to, even the ones that said, I don't want to be a part of this anymore. Goes to it.
Agreed.
We're already gonna know because we're taping it, right?
They listen. That's a good point.
Well, wow. But Suzanne, to your point, that is one of the,
Myself.
that is one of the reasons we ended up taping it, just because it was, you know, we already had them in town and it was like, let's.
That's a good idea.
Some people still said they were coming.
Suzanne, you can send that to the whole board.
Nice, way to go.
I don't know, I've got something to say. Keep saying that I'm trying to download something, like all of a sudden Google Earth is not available. All of a sudden Zoom's not available, I'm not doing
Check
it.
with you. Yeah.
I mean, do you guys need to address, or I don't know if they're asking any specific questions in here, though.
Well, they want us to. Review. Yeah. Direct Brett.
Bob Lynn, Summer.
I don't think they're asking anything here, so I think that's fine.
Right. No names. Carl. Okay.
Well, I'm doing an Apple update all of a sudden.
Of course.
But I will.
We'll make sure we have the board agree to that.
Okay.
All right, so we good with this?
That was easy.
We got through it, right? You have anything else from that, Brad?
No, I'm
Okay,
good.
we'll go on to the next item then. An update from fiber.
Okay, so fiber update. Number one, if you didn't get the message, we did a challenge. We did get a call back within a couple days. They approved our challenge and said that it was one of the best ones they've seen road, and they appreciated our work on it. So I think, number one, that's going to fare well for us. This is the same group of folks that are going to be divvying up quite a bit of money here. The challenge was huge, because if we wouldn't have got these addresses reversed, we would probably not be applying for BEAD. So
What's the amount of next level grants?
next level is 80 million,
And
860.
68.
A big difference. 868.
Yeah, 868. 68.
So I think that's a huge win. If you see Sam, tell him congratulations.
It was done on arrival. He did-
Yeah, we were.
He did a very good job.
We did spend some money getting there. It was part of the overall that we said that we were going to use for grant writing, to have them do that study. And then, so that's the one latest thing. The second thing Matt's going to talk about a little bit as far as the agreement and how we want to move forward with that. I did upload the template. Obviously, we just uploaded it, so you're not going to have any comments on it yet. But I would say in the next month, if you guys want to start walking through that, there's some things I obviously see that I would want changed. But this is a template from our partner that they used with their other partner. So it's probably a good idea to start taking a look at that. What else, Matt?
To answer, I guess, Steve's question.
Oh, yeah.
To answer your question, Steve, from a selling standpoint, the business structure isn't gonna matter so much as the fact that the wires are gonna be in the power space. It's just gonna be hard to sell that stuff, period. I mean, in all honesty.
It can be done, but it's gonna be done.
Yeah, based off the ADSS wire we're gonna use is gonna be more of that's gonna be the challenge, not the
Good.
business structure. So,
Just a thought.
yeah.
I don't know that there's anything else. There was one other thing and I can't remember now.
On broadband, I was just gonna bring up what I talked to you about today. I brought a letter last month that I had received in the mail regarding fiber in my area. I talked to Brett about it. And from Airwave Networks, talking about putting fiber optic network down in our area. This was last month. Brett and I talked about it briefly, and I think I mentioned in last month's meeting. I have since confirmed by talking to the gentleman who signed the letter, the young man who signed the letter today, that they are in fact installing fiber in my area to the home. Very selective in what areas they're doing it. I'm just southeast of the airport, but out toward Holton, not real far north of me, very selective. He got very, very small grant monies he shared with me today. But obviously they had identified certain areas that it was there. He indicated to me that most of their build, 80 to 90% of their build is in-house, so their costs are going to be incredibly low. They are directional boring right now they haven't pulled the fiber yet, okay? But they're to the point of where they're directional boring right now. And have got, what he told me today, probably 30,000 feet pulled or in the ground, not the fiber itself, but the conduit, for lack of a better term. So it's certainly a hot topic. I shared with him our position because he knew that I was a director up here. I shared with him our position and said, what we're looking at as well, but obviously we're not looking for one geographical area. We're looking for our whole service area. So it's a lot different, but there's competition out there. It's a hot ticket. And I mean, there's a lot of activity. This letter in my area has generated a lot of interest, I will tell you.
So is our cost mentioned there? Yeah.
50 Mbps, $55, 165, 275, 485, and 500 for $100. That doesn't,
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know what that means.
Good or bad.
Take one of you techie people. But again, it's just to the point of there's interest and there's activity.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just thinking of the other thing. So, when it comes to, the Okra grants, so you can look at who challenged what for next level. And our ask wasn't as big, but our costs are a little higher. So, we are planning on meeting with Okra, to let them know that essentially our costs are higher because we had to build 6 different networks because couldn't build it and ask for, northwestern. We had to have a backbone to get there. So essentially you have to build in a lot of costs. So anyways, we're gonna have a conversation with them to make sure that they understand that if you give us 3 or 4 of these areas, the cost goes way down because of that. So it's a nuance in the way that we had to design it. That's the other piece that we're working with Okra on right now. Matt, did you want to go over?
I don't know if you guys want to I know we talked about this last month, the special purpose entity versus the being a subsidiary or a division of the RMC. My recommendation is we do it as a division. I mean, that's people I've talked to, that's how they've done it, but do you have has anybody had any additional thoughts or comments, concerns, or?
Were you approaching Erin to see her recommendation?
Our recommendation is the to run it as a division.
Whatever Aaron's recommendation. I mean, legally.
I mean, honestly, I don't,
No.
I think it'd be crazy to go the opposite. The only reason we're asking you this is because we're gonna be starting on this joint venture agreement with them. And I don't want to head down one path and then
Yeah.
have to get some suitability. I mean, I know what she's gonna tell you, Suzanne, is there's pluses and minuses to both of these. But I think with her knowing kind of what we're doing, she's gonna tend to want to, would say, go that direction.
You're gonna start that pretty quick, correct?
Yeah, I mean, we'd like to.
You just vote on that or just kind of,
Probably need to start that next month.
I don't know that we need a vote as long as there's nobody against doing it that way.
everybody good with that?
Once we get it signed and ready to go,
Then we'll have
then
to-
you're gonna need to vote, but.
Everybody good with it? Let me see some heads nodding. Okay.
June will be here before we know it.
Exactly.
Early part of June, last.
I think it's the second, isn't it?
Supposed to be the 5th.
Or fifth, yeah, you're right.
We could get the whole 80 million, right?
We didn't ask for that much.
We didn't ask for that much, yeah.
We could get whatever amount we asked for, and that was how much?
On the next.
We asked for 50% of a 48 build roughly. That's 20. On average 50, I mean, the numbers.
And that doesn't include
And then we get the balance from next, or from.
It's kind of interesting, if you listen to the city council candidate speeches that they were talking about, I mean, every one of them mentioned fiber, and one of them actually mentioned us as far as a opportunity possibly, so I thought that was kind of interesting. It's on everybody's radar for sure. Sure. But you gotta also, gotta make business sense too, in my opinion.
You're correct. Okay. Jason, you got any updates for?
Me already? Yeah, we have the annual meeting, April the 3rd, and thanks to those of you that attended there, we had a good representation. We had business update from key personnel from Hoosier, and then we had a panel discussion about update on the Palisade nuclear facility restart. I thought was really good information. After the annual meeting was over, we had election of officers, the Hoosier board, and I was reelected to chairman of finance NOC. That's all I have. Does anybody have anything else they want to share from the meeting?
I was gonna bring that up when we talk about conferences, but we'll just, share then if that's, I guess we can do it now, but.
Yeah.
Let me just talk briefly about, we did have an IC board meeting, was last week. And the plan was to move in the new facility on the 12th. There were a couple hiccups along the way, so it's still gonna happen. I think everything's gotten signed. We are having our first board meeting at the new facility, June 28th. But as I said, they'll be moving in certainly next week or two if they haven't done already, and maybe Brett's aware of it. You know when they'll be moving for sure?
No,
Okay,
soon.
yeah, but
That's the section meeting this week. They were supposed to move this week, but it didn't happen.
so this week didn't happen either.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're close.
What's the address of the building there?
Pardon me?
The address where,
Well, I don't have it in front of me. I can look
It's on
on it.
Pennsylvania, I think is what they said.
It's right across from the IU,
Health.
yeah, it's IU Health, right there on, yeah, I can send it to you.
it's on Keystone.
No,
No, it's
Not-
not,
not the new
31,
one.
I think.
about 31. Not far though, probably 2-3 miles.
You
away.
get there from here.
You can get it. Yeah,
25 to 31 north, and it's like within a half mile there, I think.
okay.
About-
The legislative conference was ongoing this week, and I think it concluded today. I've heard a lot of really positive things about it, and I know I've never attended, but it sounds like a great conference to go to. So you might want to put that on your radar screen for next year to attend the legislative conference. One other thing that we've done at these IC meetings is we have a new president of the directors. And we have, after the meeting's over, we go into, all the directors go into an area and all the CEOs go into area and we discuss various topics. But a lot of ours is centered around governance issues at the local REMCs, talking about culture. And I know I've mentioned that several different times. So it's nice to hear how other REMCs are dealing with governance topics. The topic of discussion for us this last month was, or this last week, was building a relationship between the board and CEO and how important and critical that is. So we'll be talking a little bit more about that at some point. Wanted to iterate the Indiana Electric Cooperative Summer Directors Retreat is on the 26th and 27th. You don't have to go both days, but there is a CCD course and a BLC course that are offered on Friday. This is July, yeah. And then on Saturday, Brian Singletary will be there and present. And I believe there's some kind of credit given for that, but I'd like everyone to consider that as an opportunity as well. So other than that, I think that's all I have for the IEC update. And then to kind of piggyback what Jason mentioned about the annual meeting at Hoosier, I know Dale and Brian and Steve and myself all went as well. Is there anything else that you guys would like to bring up at this point in time? Right?
Well, figured everybody would go before me and I just had to have some fun little things, but I guess I have fun little facts about the Palisade. It'd be 600 full-time jobs, which I thought decent amount. It offsets 4.7 million tons of CO2 annually.
Pretty significant.
So those are my takeaways.
Okay.
I thought the Palisades portion was incredibly interesting, and I didn't get those two facts, but a couple of facts I did get was talking about the perceived risk of nuclear. And they were talking about how little space all of the nuclear waste that has been accumulated since the inception of nuclear power, I believe in the 50s, could fit into a space of a football field and it wouldn't even be full.
Right.
And yet all of these wind turbines and all of these blades that they're now burying, they've already consumed, I think they've already put more space in the ground. The other thing I found really, really interesting, it was a statistic, and he was talking about the safety factor and said that, somebody correct me if I heard this wrong, but said that an employee working at the nuclear power plant will receive less radiation in a year than what you will receive if you go to the dentist and have a full panel of x-rays taken once a year, which I found just astounding. I think when I heard that and some other things I've heard and read since then, I just think the whole potential with that in Hoosier Energy is just prolific. I think there is a tremendous opportunity. And I believe nuclear is going to be where we're going to end up going with a lot of power along
Sounds like it.
in this country. And then the only other thing, the gentleman sitting at our table was from Clark County. And Jason, I think you may know some of the history, but he was talking about, he was solicited or approached to run on the board because they must have had some major problems down there with what they were paying in stipends and meetings and everything. And he said they've got, oh, it was just unbelievable. Really kind of a bad situation. And he's about done, but it was interesting to hear. There's things going on other places.
Well, you, Steve, additional?
Ditto. Palisades was definitely very interesting. I was kind of confused on startup time. 27, because I was thinking it's 26 at one time. 27 is,
I think it's 27. I could find out.
That sounds right.
It's a pretty big time frame. It's a
Yeah.
long window to get that thing back going.
Sure.
So yeah, that was really interesting. The guy from CFC talking about the economy and.
Right.
It's good. Some of it was kind of scary on, talking about China's economy and things could get nasty.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, all in all, it was good.
It was. So you mentioned the CFC CEO, Andrew Don, I think is his name, but he did also mention, it's my takeaway for suggesting and recommending that everybody attend the CFC conference. That's going to be the annual meeting, or their annual conference is going to be up in Indianapolis. And he posted, I mean, it was in front of us, but I couldn't read hardly anybody's name that was on there, but anybody remember anybody?
Thinkers, Bill Self was one.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Dynasty, is that the Dynasty?
Yeah, I couldn't see I couldn't see the.
Yeah, so. But I have gone ahead and registered for that, and hopefully others will take the opportunity to do that, and maybe we can figure out the logistics on.
One of the things on that speak.
So 17th, 18th, and 19th. They actually have a session on the 16th. We're in June. It's June. So shortly after our annual meeting, or our,
Yeah, it's like the week after.
Yeah.
Weekend after. Last year, we had our annual meeting. I flew to Seattle the next day.
see, I was like, can I go with you? All right, anyone have anything else? Nothing else? I need a motion then for adjournment of the open meeting.
Motion.
We got a first and a second, meeting adjourned.
Is that what your email looks like?